all for joining us. Welcome, Cooper families. Appreciate you joining us this evening for our Cyber Education Family Night. We are thrilled to have Lori Getz with us this evening to help us continue our conversation about the role that technology plays in our emotional, mental, physical, and relational health and wellness. Lori is a parent, an educator, and internet safety expert, and she's worked with our Cooper community for 5 years now. She is the author of the Tech Savvy's User's Guide to the Digital World, and she has a new book coming out, very excited, in May. It's titled Navigating the Right Kind of Popular. It's a workbook for tweens and teens to help young people find healthy attention in a status-obsessed world. So Lori, we're really grateful for your help navigating meaningful conversations about technology and finding ways to create a more well-balanced approach to technology use in our daily lives. And thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Lori?
Thank you so much. And you know what, I have to apologize up front because the book was supposed to come out last May, and that was the title of it. It is now coming out in 2022, and the title has been changed to Likeability and the Truth About Popularity. So I am so sorry, Jillian, I totally forgot to send you that update.
Oh,
thank you so
I'm
much
excited for your next book.
It's been process for 3 years. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Mitch Prinstein, who wrote the original book, Popular for Adults, and he and I adapted his book as a workbook for teens. And so it will be coming out next year in 2022. So hi, everybody. I'm Lori Getz. I am an internet safety, security, and ethics specialist. And for the last 18 years, I have been talking about technology and my love of technology. I really do love technology. I find that it makes my life better in lots of ways. I don't always like parenting technology, but we'll kind of get into that a little bit. As we talk tonight, I'm going to be sharing my screen in a few moments, and I know you can see me, but I unfortunately can't see all of you. But I would love for you to interact with this presentation tonight. And so here's what I'm going to say, a couple of things. If at any point in time you have a question, please drop it into the chat. I'll be checking the chat box periodically and trying to answer your questions. The other thing that I want to say is throughout the presentation, I'm going to be asking questions. I want to hear, and I actually want, well, I'm not going to get to hear from everybody, but I want parents from you to be able to hear from your kids as well about what they know and what they think. Because when we talk about technology, we have to remember technology is like slang. The kids decide what's trending, not us as adults. They're kind of the ones driving the bus, and sometimes we're 6 cars behind. I want us to be on the bus with them, but they know more about technology than we do. Even if you are a very tech savvy parent on this call, it wasn't like you found the latest, greatest, newest social media app or website or show and said to your child, here, you should try this. It's usually our kids coming to us saying, hey, this is what I'm using, this is what I'm doing. And then we kind of sometimes say, I don't know what that is, and so you shouldn't be using it. Or sometimes we just say, okay, because we're not exactly sure what to say and do. So as we talk tonight, I'm really hoping that this will start a new conversation around issues related to privacy and social media and personal safety plans and dealing with drama and understanding grooming and health and wellness. And we're going to talk about all of that tonight. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And here we go. Okay. So I put here social media, a human experiment, and we are going to talk quite a bit about social media tonight. It's going to drive a lot of this conversation, but I call it a human experience because it was developed by humans. I don't know if you know the history of social media, but it actually started all the way back in 1969 with something called ARPANET, which came out of the Defense Department. And then it moved into something called BBS, which is bulletin board systems, and the IRC, which is the Internet Relay Chat. And these were all ways that you could kind of push out information to a select group of people. And people like myself could just geek out with other geeks online and talk about all kinds of geeky stuff. Well, then we move to where we are today and what social media looks like now, which is very, very different than what it was before. There's a lot more interaction, there's a lot more information, there's a lot more things to do. And so as we talk about technology, we can't talk about it without talking about social media, because a lot of the things we do today are social. And I call it a human experiment because very recently we have learned that social media is using us. Well, I guess it's not recently that we learned it, but recently that it came out, that the social media networks are using human experiences to actually decide what kind of algorithms to use to keep us there. So for any of you who've been following the latest news on the Facebook files, what they've been talking about is Facebook, which owns Instagram. They have known for a long time that humans are much more likely to engage with things when they are salacious. So when they make you upset, or make you feel insecure. And so they have an algorithm that they use to actually put things at the top of your feed on purpose to make you feel outraged, to make you feel upset, so that you will engage more. Because the more you engage, the more money they make. And so when I call it a human experiment, that's part of what I'm talking about. Now, Facebook, they say, well, this is just human behavior. It's not our fault that humans feel this way and they tend to engage more when they are outraged. That's true. It's not their fault, but they used it as a way to say, well, we know how humans act, so let's go ahead and use this outrage and use this kind of salacious material to keep them here. And I think it's important to understand that as we talk about technology, because we want to use technology to our benefit, not to our detriment. I love technology because it lets me access information. I love it because it allows me to communicate with people. I love it because it's fun. I'm a huge gamer. And if any of your kids have heard me talk before, they know this about me. I've been playing World of Warcraft for, oh my gosh, I think 15 years now. And I play with my nephew, Thomas. We still play together on Sundays. And I also really like technology because it lets me shop. And for any of you who've heard me speak before, I apologize because you heard this story, but I have to tell it one more time. My youngest daughter, her name is Lainey. She's now 10 years old. But when she was about 4, I put Amazon Echo Dots throughout my house. And Lainey started talking to the Echo Dot. These are the little pods that we say, Alexa, do this or that. Okay, so Lainey started talking to the pod as if it was a person. And she would say, Alexa, what time is it? Alexa, what's the weather today? Alexa, do I look pretty? Alexa, can I have some Num Num Shopkins, Barbies, and Pick Me Pops for my birthday? And Alexa came to life and said, I have all these things on Amazon. Would you like me to send them to your house? And my then 4-year-old very politely said, yes, please. So 2 days later, a giant box shows up with all the things inside. I thought her grandparents sent her an early birthday present, and Lainey is running through the house screaming that it's from her best friend, Alexa. She thought there was a person living inside this pod. So all this starts to make sense to me because 2 days earlier, a giant box of toilet paper showed up at my house. I thought I ordered it on Amazon and forgot, and it was actually Lainey in her bathroom screaming, Alexa, I need more toilet paper, which is what sent the toilet paper to the house. Now, fast forward to 5 days ago, as I am telling this story, but I had the door open to my office and there is an Echo Dot in the next room. Guess what arrived at my house yesterday? More toilet paper. So I have now muted the Alexas. I have learned my lessons, and here I am, a supposed expert with technology, and yet I don't always get it right. Because sometimes the technology thinks that it's smarter than I am. And sometimes I guess it's right. But what we want to do is find ways to use this technology to make our lives better and not worse. And so in talking about social media, as I frame this conversation tonight, I'm actually going to talk about a handful of topics. I'm going to talk about how social media is changing the rules around privacy. It's changing our perception of pop culture and politics and personal relationships, and even the perception of our own self-worth. And I think it's worth examining how social media is doing these things without necessarily vilifying it. Before I go any further, I want to say this. I don't think that all social media is bad. I think that there is a place for social media in this world. I do think that the social media giants really do have more of a responsibility to not present us with algorithms that make us feel angry and insecure all the time. I think that there are probably certain laws that need to be in place to protect consumer privacy. And at the same time, I've also seen where social media has done some amazing things. So back in, I think it was it 2015, when there was a revolution going on in Egypt. And we here in the United States were getting firsthand accounts of what was going on somewhere across the world. And we actually had real-time information coming into us that helped us understand what was going on someplace else. That to me, I felt was important. And more personally, I just had a situation happen over the pandemic. I have a 15-year-old, her name is Charlie, and Charlie is a neurodiverse child. She has a neurological disease called complex regional pain syndrome. And it's a fairly rare disease for kids to have. And she doesn't know anybody in her real life that has it. She's been diagnosed with this since she was about 8 or 9 years old. But when the pandemic hit, she fell out of remission, which means that all of the pain that she feels all came rushing back. And it causes her not to be able to walk, and it causes her not to be able to use her arms, and it affects her stomach, and it affects her heart, and it's tough. And she was feeling isolated and lonely and just so unbelievably sad. And I went onto Facebook and I found a group of kids with CRPS, with the same disease that she had, from all over the world. And so in finding this, I helped her find a community that understood her and that understood what she needed. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, and how we dealt with it, and how she met people, and how I as a parent was involved, because just being on the platform was important, but then the way that she and I engaged with the other people was what really, really mattered. A lot of times people think that internet safety is all about, don't put your name, address, and phone number on the internet and everything will be fine. Well, that's nonsense, because I'm going to show you in a minute, all of our names, addresses, and phone numbers are already out there. What internet safety is about, and the way that we use technology, the way that we do it safely, responsibly, and ethically, has a lot more to do with understanding that we don't give people control of information they don't need to have. And we shouldn't be cultivating relationships and hiding them from the people that care about us the most. That's really what internet safety is about. But it's not just internet safety, it's in the real world safety too. For all of you who are maybe already driving and you're going off and you're meeting all kinds of people, my hope is that the people that you're interacting with, if they mean something to you, you're bringing that information home and letting the people, your parents who care about you the most, know about the importance of those relationships. I often tell my kids that if someone's important to them, they're important to me too, and I don't care where they meet them. And that's what's going to keep all of us safe, not just the kids, but us as adults too. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight as well. So let's dive in though let's talk about privacy first. When I talk about privacy, what I actually mean is control, because that's what the definition of the word privacy is. You get to control who sees something, who knows something, how much they see, and how much they know. But my question, and this actually is going to be a question in a moment, is do you actually get to control the things that you put out there after you put them out there? And the answer is no, you absolutely don't, right? We know that all of these companies are collecting all of our data. You can pretty much look at it like this. If you're not paying to use a service, they are using your data, your profile, your information as their monetary value. So in 2018, when Facebook went before Congress to talk about what happened with Cambridge Analytica, which was the scandal where there were third-party applications actually had all of our information, and then they were selling our information to other people. And Facebook kind of got in trouble for this and said, well, how else are we supposed to do it? If you're not going to pay for the service, we have to make money somehow. And we make that money by connecting advertisers to individuals. You may notice you'll be on a website and there'll be a banner ad right in the center of the website for something you were just talking about, not even looking at, but talking about. How does that happen? Well, if any of you use devices like these and you have them on right now next to you. And if you've got social media running in the background, so if you've got TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, any of it running in the background, they're listening to you right now. Because when you enabled your microphone so you could add something to your story, or you could make a video to post to YouTube, you basically gave the company the right to listen to you, sell that information to third-party advertisers. And so we need to redefine this word privacy, because a lot of times people will say, but it's a private account. It's a private account. Well, sure. What that means is you now get to choose who controls what you put in that account. Years ago, I had a mom come to me and she said she had a daughter who the summer, she was a senior when she told me the story. And she told me that the summer between her daughter's junior and senior year of high school, the mom said, I want you to take screenshots of everything your friends are doing online. So all of their, all of their Finstas, all their spam accounts, like everything, all their texts, everything that they're posting, the comments, the pictures, the videos, all of it. Take screen recordings, take screenshots of all of it. And the reason she was doing that is she was making folders for each of her classmates. She was at an all-girls school here in Los Angeles, and she was a volleyball player. And so she knew that she was going to be going up against some of the other girls for volleyball scholarships. And what the mom wanted was leverage. That's really what it was. And so because her daughter had folders for each of these classmates that she was competing against, in October, there was a college fair, and all these representatives from all these different universities came onto the campus. And when the girl who had the folders saw that one of her classmates maybe walked up to Columbia, as soon as that person left, the young girl would walk up to Columbia, the representative, and hand them a folder with all the printouts of all the things that she had collected over the year, over the summer. That's a lack of control, right? A lot of times parents say to kids, oh, don't put it out there because colleges are going to go looking for it. And that's not totally true. Colleges are looking if they are interested in somebody for an academic award or scholarship, or possibly want to play on a sports team. Then the university may do a little bit of a deeper dive to know what is out there about that student, because they don't want anything that's going to embarrass the university. So years ago, when those kids all got pulled from Harvard, they all got early admission to Harvard. And then right before they started, they all got booted. It wasn't because Harvard found the disgusting website they had created. It was other Harvard students that saw it, that sent it to admissions and said, do you really want people like this on your campus? And so when we think about how all of our information, what's happening to it, we've got to remember that this word privacy means control. And you don't have control after you send it. I had a situation not too long ago where I get to do all sorts of fun things in my job. And sometimes I work as an expert witness in court cases and civil cases. And so a couple of years ago, I had a situation where I had two students. They were both 15 years old, and one family was suing the other family for sexual harassment. And the reason I got involved is because the sexual harassing messages were in emoji. And so the judge had hired me to translate emoji into English. I had never done that before. It was a really interesting situation. But what the emojis, a lot of them were attached to kind of some racy photos as well. And then with a string of emojis in it. And it was all through Snapchat. And so, and in the scenario, the plaintiff's family, it was the boy's family, and the defendant's family, it was the girl's family. So she was harassing him through emojis. He kept replying back to her like, sorry, I'm not interested in you like that. Please stop sending me these things. It was really making him uncomfortable. But the girl thought that because she was sending him via Snapchat, that they were all disappearing. And so nobody would ever know that this was happening. But what he had done is he didn't want her to know that he was taking screenshots, because Snapchat tells you if somebody is taking a screenshot. So instead, he just took another device and was taking pictures of the pictures with the other device. And that's how he collected his evidence. So there's all sorts of ways we give up control when we send texts or photos or news or shares or comments or whatever it is. Anything we're putting out there, we give up control. So my question to all of you, and here's what I'm going to ask for. So all my students out there, what I would love is for you to answer this question. And for parents, you just to listen to the answers for right now. Parents, I'm going to ask that you do not offer your opinion during the session tonight as we do some of these, so we can really, so the kids can really have an opportunity to tell you what they know. And then after the presentation tonight, parents, go for it. Tell them everything you think afterwards. So students, here's the question. What do you not give up control of? What do you just never, ever, ever, ever put out there for any reason whatsoever? And what I would love for you to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And if you'll throw it into the chat, I'm going to give you 1 minute. And so I'll set my little timer. What is something you never give up control of? You never put online? Okay, go. So I see a couple of people have put in your address, okay, your name. Okay, what else? Inappropriate images, personal information. All right, good. 20 more seconds. Bank information. Okay, terrific. Excellent. Thank you. And if you want to throw more in, feel free to do that, but I'm going to come back to sharing my screen again. So those are usually the first few answers I get is name, address, phone number, personal information. But here's the thing about that is you absolutely put your name, address, phone number, credit card information, even your social security number online at some point in time. You're going to give up control of it because if you want anything delivered to your house, that's what you got to do. You got to tell the Domino Pizza guy your name, address, phone number, and give him a credit card so this stranger can show up to your door and deliver a pizza. So I usually put those in kind of the situation specific answers, but there were a couple of other ones in there that I thought were interesting. Things about inappropriate images. So listen, if the parts of your body are supposed to be covered by a bathing suit on a beach, they need to be covered in all images. If you are a minor, if you're under the age of 18 and you are transmitting nude or semi-nude photos, even if it's of yourself, this is the production of child pornography. It is a federal offense. If you have photos of somebody not wearing enough clothing, then you are in possession of child pornography. If you ask somebody for one of these photos, you have solicited child pornography. Don't even ask. If somebody has sent you a photo and you now have it in your possession and maybe you keep it in one of those secret folders that people think that adults don't know about, but it looks like a calculator and it's not a calculator or whatever the new one is, don't keep them there either, okay? If anybody ever sends you one of those photos, you need to tell an adult and delete it immediately. Now, does the law always get involved? No, they don't. They don't. That's just the truth of it. So there may not always be a legal consequence. But there is always an emotional consequence that comes with sharing your body and not having control of your body. And that's what you do when you send those photos. You absolutely give up control. And so that's a big one for me. Please don't give up control of your bodies in any way, shape, or form. Another one are passwords. The only people who should have access to your passwords are your parents. We are going to talk about that in a few minutes. And then anything that, I don't know, maybe embarrassing later down the line for you. I had a former student who, when he was 16 years old, so this is how long I've been doing this. When he was 16, he was in one of my classes and we were having this conversation and I remember distinctly saying, don't put it out there if you don't want it out there forever. And his response to me at 16 years old was, seriously, who cares? By the time I'm an adult, when I'm running the show, I'm not going to care what some 16-year-old put on their social media site, when they were a teenager. It's not going to matter to me. So he was at one of my presentations 2 years ago. He is now a parent and he runs a law firm here in Los Angeles. And he came up to me to tell me, remember all those years ago when I said, when I'm an adult, I'm not going to care about what 16-year-olds put on social media? He said, yeah, I was really wrong. And I wasn't going to say anything back then, but I'm going to say this to all of you right now. Listen, I get it. Some of you may be sitting there thinking, you know what, none of this really matters. Who's going to really care about what I did when I was a junior in high school or when I was in 8th grade in middle school? And you think, okay, it's not really a big deal. But what we don't realize is our views change as we get older. Think about when you were 2 years old. And when you were 2, you thought you knew everything. But then by the time you were 5, you're like, wow, I didn't know anything when I was 2. See the pattern where I'm going? So right now you may be kind of thinking, I really don't care so much. I'm happy to give up control of whatever I give up control of. But you can't always know how you're going to feel in 10 years from now, in 15 years from now. So just take a beat. And before you put anything out there, ask yourself, am I willing to give up control of this? Okay. One of the other things, you know what? Let me go to the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. I just want to go to the chat and see if there's any questions. I don't see any so far. So if you have a question about privacy, please feel free to throw it in the chat and I will come back in just a few moments and take a look again. Okay. So we've got to talk about social media and cancel culture because it's a big thing right now. And cancel culture, as I'm sure you all understand, is when people go back into the Wayback Machine and they find things that have happened, way in the past or something that just happened yesterday. And they're basically saying, this isn't somebody I agree with, and therefore they shouldn't be here. And the cancel culture, the reason why I bring it up is I don't have an opinion one way or another. I actually don't have an opinion about that. What I do have an opinion about is how social media uses what I talked about earlier, that anger and that kind of salacious, that moment where it's going to get you all worked up, that outrage that sometimes brings people to cancel culture. That if you're seeing something on your social media feed, do you understand that the minute you roll over something on TikTok or on Instagram or anywhere you are, the minute you roll over something, if you spend about 3 seconds viewing something, it is then going to let that system know that you're interested in more material that is similar to that. So if you are on TikTok and you're watching a video and somebody says the N-word in the piece of music that they're listening to, that actually will tell the algorithm to send you more racist and hateful commentary. And it's just from rolling over it for 3 seconds, it's going to do that. And so when we're thinking about things that upset us, what I really want you to think about is what's being presented to me, how is it being presented to me, and am I possibly being manipulated? So that's all I wanted to say about that. And then we've got to talk about how social media has changed relationships, because we've got direct contact with all kinds of people. We now have direct contact with influencers. We've got direct contact with total strangers. We've got direct contact with people that we really care about and know and love. And we've got to think about what that direct contact is doing for us or possibly to us. Sorry, got something beeping here. Okay. We've got to think about what the direct contact is doing for us or to us. So let's talk about what it does for us sometimes. And I'll use my daughter Charlie as an example again. So remember how I said that she found a community of people that really understood her and how important that was and how it made her feel. And so in doing this though, here she is meeting a bunch of strangers. Now she's 15, right? And so she meets strangers in all kinds of places. And we have this kind of system that if someone's important to her, I want to know about it. If she's just getting to know somebody, I want to know about it. I'm on team child, not team trouble, right? I want to be there for her, not against her, because my relationship with my children is very important to me. And so by that notion, the people that are important to them are important to me too. So how did we deal with her meeting these people on Facebook? Well, there were times when she would say to me, you know what, Mom, this girl, Maggie, I think she's about my age. She seems really nice. She and I are talking about similar issues that we're having right now. I'd really like to get to know her better. And I said, great, FaceTime with her. And I'm going to come in and say hi. And at first she was kind of like, does that seem a little strange? I'm like, well, if it seems strange to somebody else, then that may not be a great person for you to be in direct contact with. Because again, they should know that your family is important to you and that we're part of this development of these relationships. So Charlie did. When she met two girls that she really kind of connected with. She FaceTimed with them. I just came by and said, "Hi, I'm Mrs. Getz. Nice to meet you." And then I left. And then that was the end of it. It wasn't creepy or weird or anything like that. And then one day there was a boy that reached out to her and DM'd her and basically said, "Hey, I would love to chat with you some more. It sounds like we have a lot in common." And she said, "Yeah, sure. Let's FaceTime. And just know my mom's going to pop in and say hi." And he wrote back, he's like, "Forget it then. That's super weird." And Charlie kind of reached out and said, "Why is that weird? What's going on?" And he started saying things that about me, that I must be this horrible parent, that I don't trust her, that I don't trust her. And that was a red flag for Charlie. And I was really, really proud of her, because this person was actually trying to groom her. This person was trying to get her to believe that he was the trustworthy individual and that everybody else in her life that she trusts, like me, is not trustworthy. It's called grooming. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more too. But what we ended up finding out is she reported it to the moderator. She said, "I don't know if there's something wrong with this, but this is what happened. And he's saying these things to me, and it made me feel a little bit weird, and just wanted to let you know." So they ran his IP address and actually discovered that it was not a 16-year-old boy, and it was an adult man. And that doesn't happen. Adults today don't normally pose as children. They normally just pose as adults that children want to get to know anyway. They'll pose as a coach. They'll pose as a pastor. They'll pose as, somebody that this person can have a relationship with. And so when adults do this, it's because when they don't pretend to be a child, it's because oftentimes they know that as soon as they FaceTime with the person, if the person hears their voice, they're going to get caught. And it's easier just to build trust than it is to impersonate and catfish. But in this situation, he was definitely trying to catfish her. It does happen. It just doesn't always happen. Now, parents, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, every stranger online must be a 50-year-old predator that wants to do bad things to kids, that's not true either, right? There are good people out there. There's not so good people out there. And the truth is, to all of my students that I'm talking to, just because somebody is a teenager doesn't make them a good person per se for you. And so we really have to kind of think about, what are these relationships that we are engaging in, and what do they mean to us? I don't know about you, but I remember being a teenager, and I had one relationship with a friend where one day this person made me feel great, and the next day they made me feel terrible, and then great, and then terrible, and then great, and then terrible. So I was constantly trying to get this person to like me on that particular day. This person was grooming me. This person was using a tactic to get me to work hard for their approval. Because when somebody does that, when they get you to work hard for their approval, they've got control. And so I really want you to be careful about the direct contact, about the relationships, and please, 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 please let trusted adults know who's important to you. Okay. Social media gives us lots of feedback, lots and lots and lots of feedback. I always make the joke of, one, if you are the kind of person that likes to post selfies, one selfie, great. 20 selfies, no one cares anymore. And we start to look like the kids on the playground in elementary school that are walking around going, "Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me?" And nobody likes that kid. I don't have a problem when people share things that they are proud of on social media. I don't have a problem if they've got an incredible talent and they want to share that talent with us. What I have a problem with is when people are putting stuff out there and then they refresh, waiting for the likes and the views and the subscribers, because it's not a healthy way to derive your self-worth. So I'm going to take another moment here, and I want to know from all of you, what is a healthy way to derive self-worth? So I want you to tell the adult that you're sitting with, and then throw it into the chat for me. What are things that you do for yourself on a daily basis where you say, yeah, that's a healthy way to feel good about myself. That's a healthy way to build self-esteem. I'll give you an example. For me, it's exercise. When I go out for a nice long run and I am done afterwards, I feel great about myself and I feel super healthy. So what do you do that is healthy to make you feel good about yourself? Take 1 minute, go. Mhm. So we have received genuine compliments. And I like that you said genuine. There's nothing wrong with compliments as long as the compliments aren't forced, right? If my kids are doing something and I walk by and they go, Mom, look at me, I'm going to say no, because I don't want to be forced into complimenting them. But if I walk by and I see something great, I'll be like, yeah, that was super cool. Do it again. Good. Genuine compliments. Playing with the dog. Good. Eating properly. Excellent. Ten more seconds. Playing sports. Absolutely. Excellent. Okay. Yes, all of those things. To my friend who said playing sports, thank you for that. I always like that analogy. When we play sports, I remember I played soccer growing up and I loved soccer. I didn't play soccer so that fans would come out and watch me score. I played soccer because I loved it. But I really did like when my fans came out and cheered for me too. That's when you get it in the right order. That's when you do the thing because it makes you feel good. And then the compliments are genuine, which is the cherry on the sundae. So thank you for that. Excellent. Okay. Do I have any questions? Let me check the chat here. All right. So what all of this comes down to is the power of normalization. And we've normalized all of these things. We've normalized that everything is private when we know that it's not. We've normalized the cancel culture. We've normalized the direct contact and the influencers and the feedback, because we often say, oh, this is just what my generation does. This is just how everybody does it. It's totally normal to compete for likes. It's totally normal to, keep a streak going even all through the night as I don't get any sleep, because this is just what we do. It's that okay boomer moment for us parents, right? Because when the kids are saying, this is just what we do, and we're kind of going like, well, why? To all of us, what we really need to ask ourselves is not, is it normal, but is it safe? Is it healthy? And is it right for me? Because when we do that, it allows us to make much better decisions about what we're seeing. When we normalize, this is how a lot of conspiracy theories are being born out of this normalization on social media, because when you are presented with something over and over and over and over again, and it's at the top of your feed, so you think this has to be what everybody else is talking about, this is what's normal, that may not be the case. You may be getting tricked by algorithms, or you may have just kind of fell prey to this idea of, this is just normal, what else can I do? Rather than taking a deeper look and saying, is it safe? Is it healthy? Is it right? Do I need to dig deeper? Do I need to look further? Do I need to make sure that I'm getting what I need for myself? Okay. So remember, I was talking about privacy and I was saying that all of your information is out there no matter what anyway. So I just wanted to demonstrate this for you. I went ahead and I looked at my mother-in-law. I always use her. She's such a good sport about this. I did block off some of her information this time, but I always forget to take off her age. So please forgive me, Bunny. That's what we call her. We call her Bunny. But there was some new information that I found this time that I was a little bit surprised about. So I've always known that I can see all of this kind of personal information, phone number and things like that. And then I can see maps to where she used to live and where she lives today. But this one was kind of new. It actually pulled up all of her usernames. It pulled up all of the pseudo identities that we all kind of think, oh, no one knows who we are, because all of these identities, nobody knows that they exist, right? So if you've got two Instagram accounts, you've got, your one IG account that's everybody can see, and then you got your Finsta where it's just like where all the good stuff is happening, and the one where you just have maybe 5 or 6 friends because you're trying to control your privacy. You got to remember that every time you use a device, so whether it's a device like a computer or a device like this, all of our devices have a unique IP address. And when that IP address sits on your home Wi-Fi network for long periods of time, and all of us were on these during the pandemic for long periods of time, it then says that all of the things that are attached to what you're doing on this device get attached to your home address and all the people who live there. And so when we think that nobody knows these fake names and nobody knows these pseudo identities, not totally true. And then we can also see things like lifestyle interests, which I always find the most interesting, that I can see what my family likes to do, that we play sports and love to read and have children and care about healthy living in a swimming pool. That's a lot of information out there. And so when we talk about this idea of privacy as control, this is what I'm talking about. That not only do these companies have all this information, but so do the people we sent it to in the first place. So our followers and our friends. So in this website, I think this was Spokio. So if you want to go and look yourself up, you can. Just know though that if you pay the 99 cents to unlock everything, then it's got your credit card information too. So that's why I take screenshots of it, so I don't have to keep logging back in, because then they track me. All right. Any questions about this? I'm going to go into another topic. Okay, so in my house right now, I just have my 15-year-old and my 10-year-old, but then there are 3 older ones that don't live in the house anymore. They are 28 and 24 and 21. They're not biologically my kids. My husband and I just over the years have taken in other children, and they have been the light of our lives and wonderful. And I'm so glad that they are a part of our family. And having older ones like that, our personal safety plans have been different over the years with different kids. And so I just want to talk about this for a minute, because many of you are students, you're starting to go to parties, you already go to parties, and I want to make sure that everybody has a personal safety plan in place. So let me explain what I mean by that. There's kind of 3 pieces to it. So the first one is about code words. When Thomas, he's now 24, when he started high school, Thomas has always wanted to be in law enforcement. And so when he was a freshman in high school, he was going to his very first party. And he said to me, he said, you know, listen, oops, I'm sorry. He said, I'm going to be going to this party, but I'm a little bit nervous because I want to be in the FBI one day. And if there are going to be drugs and alcohol and underage drinking, I'm scared that somebody might like take a picture of me or see me, and then it's going to get back to the FBI one day and I won't be able to be in law enforcement. And so I said, okay, I understand you're a little worried about this. So let's have a plan. And so the plan was, he said, well, if I text you with an X, that means I want you to come get me right away. And I don't want you to ask me any questions. And I said, all right. I said, well, I won't ask any questions that night if I come to get you, but I will be asking questions the next day. And so he said, all right. And then he came back to me and he said, you know what? I need more. And I said, what do you mean you need more? He said, well, if I just text you with an X and then you come and you pull up and I just leave the house, and, you know, everybody's going to think I'm a loser because I leave the party early. And so he said, can you do me a favor? Can you come in and make a scene? I said, I'm sorry, you want me to do what? And he said, yeah, that's kind of what I need you to do. But all right, Thomas, that's what I will do then. So he goes to the party, an hour in, I get the X, I go to the house to go pick him up, and I walk into the house and I start screaming, somebody find me Thomas. He snuck out of the house. He went out the window. I can't believe he went down the fire escape. He is he's in so much trouble. You go find me Thomas and you bring him to me right now. And his friends are like, oh gosh, dude, you gotta go. You're in so much trouble. And so he leaves and he's got his head down. He's like, sorry, everybody, I have to leave. And then that was the end of that. So this was our plan. Now, years later at a Thanksgiving dinner, his friends came over for dessert, and they remind us of this story. And they say, oh my gosh, Mrs. Getz, you remember that crazy night when you totally freaked out and you took Thomas out of the house? That was epic. This whole situation gave Thomas a tremendous amount of street cred at school after this whole thing happened. And so he never told his friends that the whole thing was set up because he was worried about, you know, his law enforcement, getting into law enforcement one day. That was part of our personal safety plan. Do I encourage you parents to go in and make a scene? No, absolutely not. However, I do think it's important that kids, you have a conversation with your parents about tricky situations and what you need from them. I did go back to Thomas and I said, why did you tell me that if I had questions, I had to wait until the next day? And he said, you know, I just wanted to know that in the moment, if I was unsafe, you would come and get me and I wouldn't have to answer any questions in the moment. Now, does that mean that if he does something that there won't be consequences? No, of course, there are going to be consequences, but maybe not in that moment, because it was more important for my kids to know that they had a plan in place that they could count on and that I would follow through. Years ago, I had a terrible situation where I lost one of my students to a horrible crime. She was getting money out of an ATM, and somebody came up behind her, and she didn't know what to do. And she was so upset in the moment, she couldn't remember her PIN when this was happening. And so the person who came up behind her, who was trying to steal the money, said, well, call your parents, call them and get your PIN number right now. And so she called, and she wasn't able to tell her parents that she was in trouble. And if there had been a code word, if there had been some sort of plan in place, she would have been able to say, hi, Yaya, can I have the code? Can I have the PIN for this, when she really calls her mom, mom, and not Yaya? Something that would have triggered that she needed help, and she needed to be found right away. We often talk about locating software. A lot of parents really like Live 360. They like Find My Friends. They like to be connected in a way. And a lot of teenagers, you don't necessarily want this. But here's my feeling about it. This technology can honestly save your life. It can really save your life. And so if we've got a plan in place, that maybe the plan is you don't look unless you have to, right? Maybe that's the plan. But by talking about it now, it's the same as talking about what do we do in case of an earthquake? Oh, you guys don't have earthquakes in Texas. Sorry, that's a California thing. What do we do in case of a fire? Oh, do you have fires? Because we're dealing with all those right now. Okay, these are all California issues. Whatever the Texas version of that is, where you have a plan in place in case something happens, you need to have a plan that deals with the technology too. And that includes passwords. So we have a piggy bank in our house. And this piggy bank has no plug, meaning that you can only put things into it, but you can't take anything out of it. And the reason that we have this piggy bank is because that's where all accounts, usernames, and passwords live. They're on a piece of paper, and every person in this house has one. I have one, my husband has one, all the kids have their own. And we put the date on the top because if we add new accounts or if we change passwords, we always put a new one in with the most current date in case of an emergency. And I've come up with all kinds of reasons for this over the years, just made stuff up that I thought could possibly happen. And then something actually happened in 2018. And if you are a senior, you probably heard this story. And so I do apologize, but I am going to tell it again. In 2018, we had two things happen back to back that were just really awful. There was a shooting down the street at our local bar, and it's where all of the kids who go to Cal Lutheran University, it's where they all go on Wednesday nights. And my 28-year-old, my oldest, she went to Cal Lutheran, and she she was not there that night, to this place Borderline on Wednesday nights. So we find out there's the shooting. The next day was the Woolsey fire, which there was a fire that went through my town. But on that Wednesday night, when the news came on and I found out that there was a shooting at that bar, my first instinct was to get in my car and drive there because I knew Laura would be there. I was calling her, I was texting her, it was after midnight, she was not answering. And I was terrified. Now, again, she wasn't there, she's fine. But I didn't know that at the time. And if I had gotten in my car and if I had actually gone there, I would have done something incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid. I could have put myself in danger as well. And then I remembered the piggy bank. And so I went to the piggy bank and I took a hammer to it and I smashed the thing open and I found her iCloud account. And so I was able to locate her phone because I had her iCloud account, and I was able to see that she was safe at home in her apartment and she was just probably asleep. We often talk about trust, and a lot of times a teenage response to these kinds of conversations is, what, you don't trust me? And then sometimes we as parents say this really weird thing where it's like, it's not you I don't trust, it's everybody else, which really isn't true. We don't trust you 100% either, right? We trust you 92.6%. The other 7.4% is your room to royally mess up and know we still love you. I want to make sure that after we finish this conversation tonight, you have a conversation about your personal safety plans, about what you need to do. Somebody should have access to your social media accounts if they need it. Because remember how I talked about that grooming situation earlier? It's not just adults who groom young people. Sometimes these situations, you've got a teenager grooming another teenager. Sometimes they're passing information through social media. I have seen this happen where, with pornography, especially, pornography is often used to groom, meaning that one teenager might send something pornographic to another teenager saying, hey, we should try this. Or, don't you think everybody is doing this these days? And they start to normalize these acts that are being shown online and in other places. When it comes to pornography, and some of you may be cringing right now as here I am, a mom, talking about this, and you be sitting next to your mom or your dad talking about this, and it might feel a little uncomfortable. But I think it's important to understand something about pornography. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. We got to remember that pornographic material is created by adult people. And the average age that something is consumed by a child, something pornographic is consumed by a child, is around the age of 11. So now you've got this 11-year-old brain that is not fully developed, that does not necessarily understand that relationships are about love and mutual respect. They haven't even held hands with somebody possibly yet. And you're taking a 40-something-year-old's version of what they think people want to see and putting it on an 11-year-old brain. When you do that, you destroy that 11-year-old brain, and it's actually called the pornification of the brain. That child grows up thinking that what they're seeing is normal. And then they use that idea of what is normal to groom others into believing it's normal too. It's not. It is not. These are paid actors and actresses. These are people who have signed contracts and agreed to do things. This is not a relationship. Relationships are built on love and mutual respect. And so if people are feeding you things and sending you things, remember when we talked about before, that power of normalization, you got to ask yourself, why? Why is this person doing this? What are they trying to achieve here? And then ask yourself, what's my personal safety plan? What am I going to do in this situation to make sure that I am safe? And I hope part of it is having a conversation with an adult you trust. Okay. I got a question about what the name of the website is. The website that I showed you is Spokeo, S-P-O-K-E-O. So another question that just came in is, did we misunderstand, or did you say that some social media apps can listen to us through the phone when the app is running in the background? I absolutely did say that. Yes, all social media apps, and including YouTube, if you enable the microphone on the app so you could make a video or add something to your story, you gave the company, when you clicked the allow button, if you read through what it says, you gave them permission to listen to you while the app is running in the background. So if you don't want them listening to you, just swipe the app closed and then they can't do it anymore. Okay, it's a really good question. So we've talked a little bit about privacy. We've talked about personal safety. We've talked about emotional health and wellness a little bit, but I want to just take these last few minutes and talk about one more health piece. So let me share my screen again. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Okay. So as this pandemic has been going on and on and on and on and on, we've been on screens more than ever before. And so I really hope that if you are actually on the screen right now, that it's propped up and that your line of sight is right here, your backs are nice and straight. If you're typing, your keyboard and your mouse are actually in your lap, not way up high, so that we are sitting ergonomically correct. That's not usually how most of us sit. But what we haven't realized is that a couple of things. One, not all screen time is created equal, and I think that's an important thing to say. And two, the way we use the technology can also really matter in our health and wellness. It's not just the screen, but the way we interact with it. So we do a few things in our house. One thing we do is something called 20-20-20. When I'm not lecturing, I will, if I'm just listening or if I'm just, typing something, every 20 minutes or so, I will take a quick break. I'll stand up, I'll stretch, I'll look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. And that's to help with my eyesight so that I don't get kind of this fixed eyesight. The gaming community discovered something really interesting a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago now. The gaming community they discovered that the more physically fit they are, the more mentally agile they are, which means they're basically better at the games when they are physically fit. They also discovered that they were developing myopia, nearsightedness, and it wasn't from staring at the screen, it was from a lack of inactivity and vitamin D. And so you get a lot of Madden players who now go outside and throw a football, a lot of FIFA players who go outside and kick a soccer ball. If you're playing things like Fortnite or Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto, like don't pretend to shoot people or run them over. That would just be weird and dumb, but creating an obstacle course and traversing that, not a bad idea. But we really, really, really need to think about not only how we're sitting when we're on the devices, but how much we're moving too. We need to move more than we sit every single day. Every day we need to move more than we sit. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be heart healthy exercise. That's only an hour a day. But I mean that if you sat for 6 hours at school, the last thing I want you to do is come home and sit for another 6 hours binge watching Netflix. I think it's also important to understand when I say not all technology is created equal, that we've got different priorities. I would hope that you spend more time with your screens creating instead of consuming. If all we're doing is constantly consuming, we're not really getting a whole lot out of it. And one thing that I saw through the pandemic was kind of this school socializing personal entertainment piece getting really mixed up. So what would happen is students would be doing school and then they would just be tired at the end of the day. And so they would take their device into their bedroom and they're like, I'm so done. I just want to be left alone. Don't talk to me. Just let me be. Let me play my games. Let me watch my shows. Let me be. And when they got to that type of personal entertainment, they were isolating. You guys started isolating yourselves. If any of you have ever had a moment where maybe you were doom scrolling, or maybe you were just mindlessly on TikTok for a while, and after 10 minutes, you start to kind of not feel anything anymore because there is no interaction. It's the level of engagement is not actually firing inside your brain and giving you the serotonin you're looking for. A lot of it is just dopamine, and people get dopamine and serotonin mixed up a lot. Dopamine is not about happiness. Dopamine is about motivation. And so when you get a ding, a ping, a notification, it rises the levels of dopamine and motivates you to pick up your device so that you can gratify yourself instantly. We need to take breaks from that because what we're starting to do is create brains around technology that look like those of drug addicts, that we start stimming. If any of you have ever dealt with something called phantom vibration syndrome, where you thought your phone was vibrating even when it's not, that's your brain's way of saying, I need this stimulus, so I'm going to produce it myself. So I'm motivated to pick up this device so that I can feel gratified, when really there's no happiness there. None of the happy chemicals are flowing in that moment. And so giving yourself time away and space away from these devices is also really important. If I could get everybody to do one thing, it would be to get the devices out of the bedroom, especially before bed at night. When you take a device to bed with you, 3 things happen. The first thing is the blue light that comes from the device tells your brain it's daytime instead of nighttime. Maybe you turn on night shift or flux. That's great. That gets rid of the blue light. It doesn't help with problems 2 and 3. Problem number 2, you don't get off the device when you say you're going to. It's always one more comment, one more episode, one more game, one more. And then the third, the third problem is a science problem, and it has to do with energy. Our devices give off something called electromagnetic force, EMFs. And when you have high doses of EMFs within 10 feet of your head, it penetrates the pituitary gland of the brain and suppresses melatonin. We're not getting a good night of sleep. And if you're in middle school, you need 9.25 hours of sleep every single night. If you're in high school, you need at least 8 hours of sleep every single night. And if you're not getting it, it affects your memory, your mood, and your metabolisms. And so just by saying an hour before bed, I'm going to get this device out, gives you that space that we're talking about. So it may mean that you've got to change some priorities around. It may mean that, you may have to give up a couple of things, and I get it, but your sleep is more important than anything else for your health. And I know that I'm just about out of time here, so I'm going to just go through to this last piece here. Here's how we get it right. We think about all the things we need to do in a day. There is no magic number about how much screen time is healthy for any of us. It doesn't exist. But when you ask yourself, do I have time to be doing this, or should I be doing something else? Should I be sleeping? Should I be exercising? Should I be hanging out with a friend? Should I be eating dinner with my family? Go ahead and put a device on this little block of wood over here. It's a charging station that reminds you that there's a time and a place for everything. There are apps like Stay Focused or Site Blocker or Self-Control app that will allow you to say, okay, for the next 30 minutes, don't let me access YouTube or Hulu or Netflix or Amazon, whatever it is that distracts you, so that you can focus in and get your work done. Getting it right means finding the right balance. It means figuring out if you have time to be doing it. It's about moving more than you sit. And the last piece is about your behavior. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Here's how you know if you're getting it right. Like I said earlier, I love World of Warcraft. I've been playing it forever. But World of Warcraft doesn't stop me from getting all the other things done that I need to do. It doesn't make me act in a weird way. I'm not angry or aggressive afterwards. My behavior tells me that I can handle the time of it and I can handle the content. If you're doing a certain thing and after you do it, you don't feel good, you probably shouldn't be doing that thing for right now. If it's gaming and you just are losing yourself in that game and time is flying out the window and you're not sleeping, for right now, you probably shouldn't be playing that game. If you are trying to become a social media influencer, but you are stuck on constantly refreshing, begging for likes and views, you're not in a healthy emotional place and probably should not be trying to be an influencer for right now. It's how we use the technology that is going to make it better. And that's really what I want us to try and focus on. And so I want to say a big thank you to all of you for coming tonight. If you've got, I'm going to turn this over to Elisa in just a minute. If you have more questions, please throw them into the chat. But I will stay here until I see that all questions have been answered. And I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.
Well, I just want to take a quick second to extend a very big thank you to you, Lori, on behalf of the Cooper community for a great presentation this evening. We always have a great time when we get to learn from you, so thank you. At this time, I want to remind all upper school and middle school families that the school's partnership with Ms. Getz is ongoing. We have another opportunity for students and parents coming up on November 17th. During the school day that day, Ms. Getz will lead student cyber education sessions for both middle and upper school students. And then that evening, there will be a parents-only parent education night for middle school and upper school parents. If you want more information on this, you can log into the portal, parents, and you can go to the Cooper Cyber Education Program tile. You can also just keep looking at the weekly messengers that come out. We have information in there for you as well. Or if all else fails, just email Ms. Crane or myself any questions you might have about the upcoming programs. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a good rest of the evening. And thank you again to Ms. Getz.